Hi, I'm Andre Cormier, and I'll be analyzing Carlo Crivelli's Lamentation over the Dead Christ. This piece is 88.3 centimeters by 53 centimeters, or 34 and 3 quarters by 20 and 7/8 inches. It is previously thought to have been the top portion of an altarpiece, as it's seemingly meant to be seen from the bottom, based on the angling of the altar and the figures depicted. This is a Renaissance work, but it has distinctly Gothic elements introduced by Crivelli's distinctive style. Crivelli's upbringing as a painter likely started young, due to his father being believed to be a painter named Jacopo Crivelli. He would apprentice under either Jacopo Bellini or in the Vivarini workshop. If we are to go with the Vivarini assumption, it would make sense as Antonio's self-imposed distancing from the Renaissance movement, co- con- combined with his cousin Bartolomeo's infatuation with it, would have led to Crivelli, if he were uh, trained in this environment, having the right environment for him to have an appreciation for Renaissance ideals, but not be so entirely infatuated with them as a number of Renaissance artists would be. And ostensibly, this exposure would have led to the composite style that Crivelli is so known for. There are four figures depicted from left to right. They are Mary Magdalene, the Madonna, Christ, and Saint John. The characters are typical of Lamentation, but the agonized expressions and gestures are unique for this time period. This was a sort of evolution in Renaissance trends regarding realistic depictions of figures in painting, especially when it came to religious figures, as depicting them realistically was somewhat of a taboo, considering it was tying them to a human nature which subordinated or could be seen to be subordinating their divine nature. Uh, this trend was continually evolving and could be seen in other works such as Mantegna's Lamentation when it came to the figures of Mary Magdalene and the Madonna that are next to him and the agonized expressions on their faces. Previously, these sorts of worldly emotions were not something to be associated with the divine, especially given the importance of the Madonna as the intermediary between us mortals and Christ. This would change. The Madonna would not be so central to compositions, giving Madonna enthronements would give way to biblical scenes such as Lamentations and Annunciations and the like. Uh, And with this shift, with this shift away from Madonna, there would be a gradual shift towards the importance of the Holy Trinity, evidenced by works such as Masaccio's Holy Trinity and works that would come out of that. And eventually, this would lead to Mannerist works such as Parmigianino's Madonna of the Long Neck, where worldly consideration would go so far as to actually consider the sensuality of the Madonna's body and or of her physical form. And in the same vein, you could say the agonized expressions of the people depicted speak to an ultimately human nature, giving them a grounding in reality instead of keeping them aloft in the realm of the divine. Mary Magdalene holds up Christ, but he does not seem to weigh as much as one would expect a adult male to, even if he is as emaciated as he was. The Madonna reaches out to his wound, though the crown of thorns on his head seems not to have injured him at all. Renaissance influence is evident in the proportionality of the figures and the emphasis on realistic depiction from the figures themselves to their adornments and their individual locks of hair. However, things like Christ's foreshortened left leg are testament to a lack of deeply considered linear perspective, as the angle it is raised at is at odds with the downward facing viewing angle, making the leg appear smaller than this one. Although, to be fair, this may be a biased opinion considering I have never viewed this work. With it leaning down towards me. So, from that perspective, that leg could look entirely different. The tech the texturing is also one of the foremost elements of this painting. The individual locks of hair are eh, very, very well rendered, and even the intricate details on the frieze relief on the bottom is it's enough that you're able to make out individual details on it, which is more than uh, a lot of Gothic art was doing at the time, or was doing prior. The draping cloth is reminiscent of what real cloth would behave like, with rich coloring and a very noticeable glossiness also shown also in Christ's hair and on his body, although that may only be due to the difference in skin tone. The intricate detail laid into the gilding is one of the most impressive aspects of the work and is quite Gothic when it comes to the ornamentation. But at the same time, it is not necessarily Gothic. It could just be it's associated with the Gothic tradition, but it Gothic art doesn't necessarily have all of the intricate work that it has on it. Sometimes it's just flat gold leaf, which is somewhat of a differentiation. Fruit is also a common symbol in Crivelli's works, with the attributed inspiration being from the Old Testament Psalms, where one line says, "I will set on your throne a son, the fruit of your womb." This phrase often attributed to often said to be a foretelling of the coming of Christ, and considering Crivelli's continual use of the symbolism and his continual depiction of scenes of either the life of Christ or of Christ's coming. It makes sense that such subject that symbolism would be continuous throughout all of his works, or throughout a good number of his works, especially the ones with this subject matter. The apples are reminiscent of Eden and the original sin, while the cucumbers denote bounty and virility as they are filled with seeds. The, the bounty and virility being the aforementioned fruit of Mary's womb. The gilding is also one of the most Gothic elements of Crivelli's work, as previously mentioned. The gold isn't unheard of in Renaissance works, but it is used noticeably less than in Gothic works. There's intricate detail laid into the finery, and it's even mirrored across and it's proportional to, or it's symmetrical when it comes to like the red lines that frame the middle portion, where there's a lot more uh, random detail when it comes to the gilding laid there. The Renaissance influences also worked to keep this painting from being too Gothic, such as the frieze shown at the bottom, uh, which is included on wood. Although it being on wood is somewhat Gothic, though it being a frieze at all and being harkening back to the classical is more Renaissance than Gothic. There's no pediment on this, but it does seem like there's a cornice above the aforementioned frieze, making it seem reminiscent of classical architecture. The altarpiece as well actually uh, works to it provides a level of atmospheric perspective because it does not cut off at the edges of the painting. It continues and alludes to a larger space that is present. All of the Renaissance elements are different from the Gothic elements in that they explore what one would logically think about in attempting to bring a sense of realism to this supernatural scenery. There is there's newfound consideration given to the human aspects that allow these figures to occupy our world, and there are some intricacies that come with that. But uh, the there are complexities when it comes to depicting divine figures in the mortal realm, but that would change as time went on. The the Christ lightness in here would be contrasted when it came to Michelangelo's Pietà and other works like that, where Christ's weight is obvious and there is consideration given to that. And Crivelli does give obvious consideration to these elements, but they're not as defining as they are with artists such as Michelangelo.